when we are under stress, very often we feel isolated. We think we're the only person who is suffering, and that it's a weakness to ask for help. And so, bringing these causes on mindfulness and compassion to the healthcare community, first we're normalizing the fact that we are all human beings, and we would all have good days as well as bad days. And what do we do when we're facing a difficult time? As you know, many healthcare professionals would beat themselves up, criticize themselves, and think that they're the only person who would understand how it feels, how bad it feels. And so during the course, especially the self-compassion course, we normalized that and said, you're not alone. There are others who would feel this way if they were struggling like you. And this is really the precise time to show yourself some kindness instead of more self-judgment, more self-criticism, more isolation. And so in teaching them tools to bring kindness to themselves, which is really simple things to calm down the physiology, right? We're talking about having a kind word for yourself, offering yourself some supportive touch, the kinds of things that moms would do to their babies when the babies are crying and stressed out. These are all things that, even as adults, we need that loving touch, and we need that kind word, someone to do something good for us so that we are seen and we're heard and we're valued. So, as you know, the mindfulness courses, we teach a group of maybe 15 to 20 people over 6 to 8 weeks. We engage with them as people, we get to know them as friends. And I think it's really in those circles that the human connection is being developed. So people start realizing that they're not just a number in the system. They're not just a transactional piece in the healthcare system. They are very much a valued voice. Not just a voice, but heart and hands and eyes. The whole human being is precious. And so I feel that by going one circle at a time, we're really expanding this awareness that we can be kind and we can still get the job done, and we might even get the job done well without the negative effects of maybe stress and anxiety and depression. So it's actually all good news, but it's very slow, painstaking work. But it only takes the first circle, and then the circles keep expanding, like just ripples out. It becomes the survival of the kindest rather than survival of the strongest.
Welcome to Flourishing in Medicine, from Surviving to Thriving. I'm your host, Dr. Mick Krasner. This podcast is produced by EmPro, a medical professional liability insurance carrier headquartered in New York State. EmPro is committed through its educational and peer support offerings to support the physicians they protect. In today's episode of Flourishing in Medicine, from Surviving to Thriving, I have the joy of reconnecting with Dr. Virginia Lien from Singapore. She is a physician whose path into medicine began with a love of psychology and a deep desire to be useful, and a quiet commitment to kindness shaped by faith and lived experience. Virginia's story takes an unexpected turn when a serious burn injury places her on the other side of the healthcare system as a patient. It's there that she discovers mindfulness and self-compassion, not as an abstract idea, but as lifelines. What emerges from that experience is the Mindful Compassion Project in Singapore, and a growing movement to bring humanity, presence, and kindness back into the daily lives of healthcare professionals. Together, we explore how small circles of connection can ripple outward to influence culture, leadership, and the very way care is delivered, reminding us that flourishing in medicine begins by caring for the caregivers themselves. And now my conversation with Dr. Virginia Lien. So welcome to Flourishing in Medicine, from Surviving to Thriving, Virginia. It's just such a pleasure to having been hosted by you in Singapore a few times, and to be able to talk with you like this in have a conversation. So welcome.
It's really good to see you again, Meg. It's almost been a year since we last met.
Yeah, it has. So I look forward to whenever it happens when we'll see each other in person, but this is almost as good. So I'm would like to start this conversation as I start many of these podcast conversations with just a question of why medicine for you? There's so many things, you have so many talents and so many experiences, knowing a little bit about your background. What was it about medicine and what was it about you, your upbringing, your character, the influences that led you to medicine? We'll start there and then we'll go into some of the other aspects of what you've done with your career.
Thanks for that question, Meg. To be honest, my first love was not medicine. It was actually psychology. I remember picking up a book on child psychology when I was 15 in the school library. And I said, this is it. This is what I'm going to do. And it was virtually unheard of in Singapore. We're talking 40, 50 years ago. And so, I studied, got my grades, and my parents said, well, there's no way you're going to study psychology because that means you've got to go overseas. So you've got to find something in Singapore that you could do. And I guess medicine was the next best thing, healing the body or healing the mind. But I had no idea then. So that's how I got into medicine. But I do remember as well being quite ill as a child. I think I had undiagnosed gluten or dairy allergy. So I had lots of colds, lots of visits to the doctor. And we had a really good GP. I still remember his face and the smell of his clinic, the disinfectant. His name is Dr. Hira. And he was a very kindly old man and would always go home with, bottles of colored medicine that tasted disgusting. But we got better. And so I guess there was some connection there as well, like, okay, I want to help people like this doctor. And if not in psychology, then yeah, maybe medicine.
There are so many different questions that came up as you were speaking. One is I had this urgent question that I didn't quite understand, why would you have to go overseas? But maybe it's because the training in psychology was not as available, perhaps, but you can clarify that. But the other underlying question is that, both psychology and medicine, something about those fields and something about those professions, they have something in common, of course, as I'm sure you are aware and know. So underneath either choice, there was some desire to do something that had to do with humans, human suffering, alleviating that, whatever it was. And I'm just curious about what was underneath that, whether it was psychology or medicine. What was it about you, your upbringing, your experiences that brought you there?
Well, it could be about my Catholic faith, and doing good, helping people. But I think there's a part of me that wants to be kind and do something that is worthy. And now a memory is coming to me. In the old days where we used to watch the black and white television shows, and there were not so many shows, I used to watch Combat with my brothers. And then as well as MASH. So I thought to myself, I really want to be a useful person. So given that, anything could go wrong in the world, if I was a doctor, even in times of war, I would still be able to do something to help someone. And that was probably another thread that I remember.
That's kind of what I was wondering about, and that there was a thread that really wanted you to do something useful. And the faith part of it certainly would play a role in that. And it was all consistent. You've done so many things in your life, and I'm wondering if you can walk us through then this journey toward the Mindful Compassion Project, and specifically the background and what were the things, why did you create this kind of approach in this program, which I think has been so profound? And what are some of the activities and programs that they do, but more about what led up to it. That would be really, really interesting because medicine's a long, arduous journey, and you've had a lot of twists and turns on that journey yourself.
Yeah, thanks, Meg. I did begin my medical career as a general practitioner. Initially, I wanted to study rehabilitation medicine because that was where I was posted to as a medical officer. And I really enjoyed the work with the physiotherapists, the occupational therapists, etc. But again, we did not have local training for that specialty. And so I decided that I would just stay working locally, and that brought me to general practice. But in general practice, what I really enjoyed was talking to patients. And so there was a bit of that psychology creeping in, isn't it? And very fortunately, the School of Postgraduate Medicine actually offered a course in psychotherapy. So 15 years after starting as a general practitioner, I did manage to get into a grad dip in psychotherapy, absolutely loved it. And then I switched into doing counseling for another 15 years. So finally got my dream. But sad to say, in one of my counseling sessions, I actually met with an accident. It was a fire accident, and I sustained about 20% of second-degree burns to my lower limbs. And then that got me experiencing the life of a patient for the next 3 to 5 years. And it was really in that time that the idea of mindfulness was first suggested to me. I had never heard of the word before. But I did have a yoga practice and a breath practice, and that really got me through some of the most painful parts of the medical journey. So I found in the mindfulness and compassion causes a way to really help myself think about my situation and begin to accept that my life has changed drastically to people living in the modern world, just trying to cope with the chaos of life. So at that point, when I started offering courses in mindfulness, it was really to general public. But after a while, as I continued to do my master's in Oxford with the MBCT, which is mindfulness-based cognitive therapy, well known for helping patients with recurrent depression, I realized that actually the healthcare population might be quite well taken care of, but the doctors, the nurses, they were actually neglected in that care because we always tend to put other people first and never ourselves until we kind of drop out, like myself. So, even from my hospital bed, I was asking my friends how they were, and they were like, hang on a minute, you're the one who's, unwell now. We're asking you how you are, not the other way around, So it was really hard to take off that caregiving cap. So for my thesis, I decided to really look into how mindfulness, compassion, and empathy could help the well-being of the healthcare professional. And that was possibly also triggered by meeting you in Oxford the year before my master's, because you gave a master class for mindfulness for healthcare professionals.
I'd be really interested, and I think our listeners would be very interested in a little description of healthcare in Singapore, at least from your experience living there, studying there, and practicing there. And then, as you describe that, maybe you can describe a little bit about the conditions that would make it such that healthcare professionals would benefit from the kinds of things that you have to offer. And then we can get into maybe a little bit of the specifics of what are some of the things this Mindful Compassion project offers. But I think it'd be really nice to hear a little bit more about the healthcare system in Singapore.
I was a lot more familiar with the system while I was in my undergrad as well as my early years practicing, because healthcare in Singapore has really developed so quickly that it's unrecognizable from my student days. In those days, we had maybe 5 or 6 major hospitals. maybe taking care of a population of about 3 to 4 million. A lot of work was done at the primary care level, individual general practitioners, as well as what we call the outpatient dispensaries, the polyclinics, which takes care of different districts within the very small city island state. Now, currently, we have about 5.5 million still living in a very small island. And many of our old hospitals have all been upgraded into multi-story buildings, with massive car parks, underground car parks, and departments that are, in the basement. We have what we call restructured hospitals that could take on many, many more patients, and new hospitals in every district as well. I would say currently Singapore's medical education is also prized in the international scene. I think our universities are doing very well. Right now, we have not just one university, we have 3 medical schools. And so every year we have maybe 2 to 300 new doctors graduating. And then we have also been sending our doctors who are specialists to international centers around the world to pick up the best tools in different areas, including ophthalmology, stroke care. And so I would say that we're very, very advanced in a matter of 40 years. It's almost like a village to a city practice. That being the case, I find that the burden on the students and the doctors have also escalated. Not only are they expected to deliver good clinical medicine, they're expected to do research, they're expected to juggle lots and lots of different treatment modalities. But also, there's a fear of litigation that's also going up,
Whoa.
because patients are getting better educated, and there is only so much knowledge that each healthcare professional can have right in their heads. So things do go wrong, and the question is, how do we balance this speed in technology with still being able to care for people like in the old days? There is actually some engagement, and there is personal sharing of stories. The doctors actually know their patients rather than it being maybe just a number nowadays in a very big public clinic where you don't necessarily see the same doctor. And there's a lot of comorbid medical conditions to juggle with now. So it is a lot more complex nowadays to do medicine, as you would have experienced yourself, Mick.
Yeah, thank you. That outlines it, and in a lot of ways, we have much more in common, our healthcare systems here with Singapore than we don't have in common. But that description of the rapid advancing, along with the rapid advancements technologically and structurally and systemically, have been certain stressors that your health professionals are experiencing, and that you're responding to that. So if you could talk a little bit then, Virginia, about the kinds of programs that you've been developing and been delivering, and it would be great if you have, if it comes to mind, a story or two of, you don't have to give the names of any of the individuals, but some kind of transformation that you've seen happen with some of the people that you share your programs with. That would be really, really nice to hear as well.
Thanks, Mick. I started the Mindful Compassion project in 2017, more to bring awareness to the kinds of programs that might be useful and could be scaled up locally. So I'll just name those programs. The first one was the Mindful Self-Care Program, which was developed by Dr. Maura Kenny, and she adapted it from the MBCT course because she was a trainer in MBCT. It was a 6-week, 90-minute program for healthcare professionals. So, really bringing in the important elements of mindfulness and how it can directly help the healthcare professional in their work. So, I love that program. The other program is the Self Compassion for Healthcare Communities. And this, many people will know, it's developed from the parent course, the Mindful Self Compassion course, the 8-week program by Chris Germer and Kristen Neff. So the 6-week program was just about minted around the time of COVID. So the 6-week program of 60 minutes brought to the healthcare institution with the intention of helping healthcare professionals learn to be kind to themselves, instead of beating themselves up when things go wrong. I find that a very, very powerful program. It just came just at the right time when people were really feeling exhausted, hopeless, and helpless. And it really brought quite a bit of encouragement and strength to the people who could receive the program. And of course, we had to do it online when it first started. And then the third program that our project is bringing attention to is the Mindful Practice program that you yourself had developed with Ron Epstein. It's a much more complex program to learn and to teach. But I think with the a firm foundation in mindfulness and self compassion, your program is really unique in that it does address practice problems, practice issues. It gives professionals a way to be with each other and converse with each other in a retreat atmosphere, really taking time to take care of themselves, give them permission to continue to care for themselves after the program. So, those are the three programs that actually I was highlighting in the Mindful Compassion Project. And I'm very glad to say that all three programs have since been implemented in Singapore and growing in various directions. An example of someone who might have benefited from the program, and this is a really sad but moving example. We were doing an online self compassion course for maybe 20 nurses, and some of these nurses were not from Singapore. So they could be from Myanmar, they could be from Philippines. And during the time of COVID, they were separated from their families and they had lost family members to COVID. And initially we thought, oh my God, this is not a good time for them to be doing a self-compassion course because they would be, it would be too close to their traumatic memories. But they said that actually doing the course really helped them grieve, about not being with their families during the time of COVID while they were stuck in Singapore caring for our patients, right? But it gave them a way to appropriate their experience and also find the strength to be kind to themselves at this time. So I was really quite moved by that story. Another story would be, a nurse saying that having come to the course, she could see how some of her ICU patients were being overtreated by physicians, and she had so much compassion for them that she wanted to speak up. There are many, many more examples. We have also convened a group of healthcare professionals, 8 ladies. You've met some of them. You've met all of them, actually. And they've come from medical education as well as clinical medicine. And they are really keen to share this awareness of being more mindful and being more compassionate in the work that we do without actually taking away the efficiency, but actually enhancing satisfaction in the job as well as having a more personal encounter with patients because we're more present to ourselves.
How do you understand these positive experiences that people have had, even when you were thinking that maybe it wasn't the right time? How do you understand just the power of this work for our colleagues at many levels, nursing colleagues, physician colleagues, other medical applied practices? How do you understand that this work impacts them, and what do you think the impact for the care of your communities could be should this really scale in a certain way, that more and more people are able to kind of integrate this into work? You described a system that is really moving very, very quick with a lot of stresses, a lot of pressures. And you described patients sometimes feeling, or at least seemingly being treated or worked with as less as individuals than the description you had when you saw your physician when you were growing up, and have that kind of relationship and the adjectives you use to describe that person. So just kind of connect for us how you kind of conceptualize the work that you bring to it and its potential impact. How do people find their way with that?
I'm sensing that.
You describe these three types of programs: this mindful self-care, the mindful self-compassion, the compassion program, and then the mindful practice and medicine, flourishing in medicine program. And of course, the third one I know the most. And I know that through your efforts, you have had help train 60 or more physicians mostly, but other health professionals in that, and also developed a fair number of facilitator trained folks. And there's an inflection point, I think, in that particular program, in that Singapore now has really enough trained teachers in that to begin to really scale that if it desires to do that in a certain way and have impact in the various systems and districts that healthcare is delivered in Singapore. And of that, I'm so grateful, but also so hopeful that you have a very unique opportunity given this small geographic and in some ways population that can be impacted by this. So maybe you can just describe some of the ways you think about the future of all this work in Singapore, some of the challenges, and what you're most looking forward to as you continue to work in this space of helping people flourish, helping your colleagues and other health professionals flourish.
I think the Flourishing in Medicine program is coming to us at a very good time because, in tandem, what's been developing is the arts and humanities focus locally. So the interest has allowed us to sort of put the two together, right? I mean, the interest in arts and humanity, bringing back humanity to healthcare, but then how do we actually do it in a way that makes sense to the healthcare professional? It's not just about self-care and just being compassionate to yourself, but how do we translate this into systems change, into patient satisfaction? So I think we're very much in the thick of that at all levels, including our undergrad education. So what I see Singapore doing is that what really helps is we are very small. We're very small, and in being so, we are very connected. So the healthcare professionals, they know of each other. So it's easy to invite people who are like-minded, like-hearted to come together for that conversation, create that circle, and share expertise. And then they can go back to wherever they come from and start bringing it to their team, to their students, to their patients. So I'm quite excited about that. Our geographical size makes it much easier to implement and grow programs. But I think the most important factor isn't just the expertise, but it is the friendship that we have cultivated amongst the teachers who are actively facilitating, because we know we're not alone doing what we are passionate about. We've found other voices, we've found our tribe. And so in doing so, we could encourage each other, we could share knowledge, but most of all, we are sharing our lives. We know the other well enough to be vulnerable, to be human. And in doing so, we become more energized with whatever we're doing. So I would say the most important thing, to not get carried away and to have each of our own individual mindfulness practice intact every day, to make sure we're still grounding ourselves every day and we're being kind to ourselves every day. And then we engage others in our day-to-day. And much as we have a 5-year plan or a 10-year plan to spread this work, we also live the days and the moments and the minutes. So I see it as a continuum, right? The personal practice will be translated into a group voice, and then the group, of course, can bring this work even regionally to Asia Pacific. Your recent involvement in the Asia Pacific Medical Education Conference in China, Yiwu, is one case in point. I mean, There's a huge country there to bring flourishing in medicine to, So there are many exciting opportunities. Yeah. But I would say we must stay grounded with our practice and with our friendship with one another.
Thank you. I want to reflect on a few things you said because it was moving, but also so true that in part thanks to your efforts, Virginia, creating the framework and the scaffolding of a community that really connects with each other and stays connected, even though you work in so many different places. And so that's a model really for all of us listening to this conversation to think about that it starts very local and it starts with connection and it starts with creating safety and teams and accepting all the differences that are there, but also having some kind of common goal, some common vision in mind, which you all have. And when you talk about, you've got this huge, huge country right pretty close by, not too far at least, China, where we had this conference last week. I had several encounters with physicians and medical educators there who were describing some of the same angst and challenges and pressures that you described as what happened in the last 40 years in Singapore, because they are incredibly rapidly changing their healthcare system and modernizing. And so I think it provides an opportunity for you all to be of service beyond Singapore as well, at least to help train folks there who can attend to what I'm sure will be similar experiences of challenges in working within the healthcare system as health professionals. So really grateful to you for your efforts in it. Just thinking about how you started and the story you shared with us and where you are now, it's pretty remarkable to go over that in a short period of time, but it's pretty profound. We're winding down the conversation. I'd like to just take the opportunity to have you share anything or say anything, observations or questions you have, or things that our audience might want to think about as they listen to this.
Yes, Meg. I think it was just one more point I wanted to reflect on. So much of the work I've been doing is on ground level with students, with allied health, some clinicians. But what is becoming more evident is that we have to bring this work to leadership. We have to bring it up to leadership so that leadership can also experience what it's like to be a more mindful and more compassionate presence in their work. And that is how systems could begin to really, really change as well. And so I'm happy to report that we are also working on that level. Another program that a colleague is bringing into Singapore, which is the Compassionate Leadership Program, and so there is a lot of complementary threads going on. So hopefully that's something that the leaders out there could begin to think about and, see themselves as stronger leaders for being compassionate rather than what they fear. Compassion makes us weak or makes us inefficient. Actually, the reverse is true. Compassion really gives us much more resilience, and it also connects us with others. And that's the whole point, isn't it? We are not separate from each other, whether we're leaders or we're the person wheeling the trolley, right? Yeah. So I like to see this sort of connection happen as well in the foreseeable decade.
That's lovely. What a wonderful way, actually, to close this conversation as a call to engage leadership and also to reflect, as you did in a very subtle way, but a very profound way, that we are all leaders in a certain way. So we're not separate from that, but we can be very intentional about having that conversation with leadership, and things could really move forward in that way. So thank you so much, Virginia.
Thank you, Meg. Pleasure to speak with you again.
Thank you very much for listening or viewing today's podcast. We will include a summary of today's podcast and links to Dr. Virginia Lien in the show notes. I would like to conclude by sharing another practical exercise, contemplative exercise to help you flourish. Dr. Lien spoke of the Compassion Project as well as her own work in mindful self-compassion, and I'd like to explore that briefly with you. So please take a few moments just to sit comfortably if you're not already comfortable. Eyes can be closed or open, and I'd like you to try to extend to yourself for just a few moments the following wishes, even if it might be a little stretch for you in this moment. May I be kind toward myself even when things are difficult and I make mistakes. May I be kind toward myself even when things are difficult and I make mistakes. May I realize that I am human, and being human involves not being perfect. May I realize that I'm human, and being human involves not being perfect. May I be able to hold in awareness a sense of myself that is not dependent on things I do or don't do, but on who I am. May I be able to hold in awareness a sense of myself that's not dependent on the things that I do or don't do, but on who I am. I hope you found this podcast and the simple exercise useful to you, and look forward to having you join us for the next episode of Flourishing in Medicine, From Surviving to Thriving. To learn more about EmPro, please visit www.myempro.com. If you'd like to know more about EmPro's peer support programs, you may find information at www.myempro.com/peer-support. If you're a physician or a medical student and in need of urgent support, please consider calling Physician Support Line at 1-888-409-0141. The Physician Support Line provides a safe space to discuss immediate life stressors with volunteer psychiatrist colleagues who are uniquely trained in mental wellness and also have similar shared experiences of the profession. For more information about me and my work, please visit www.mickkrasnermd.com or www.mindfulpracticeinmedicine.com. Until next time.